Hey guys, this is Thomas Reilly-King, director of Shivers in the Attic, and today we're going to talk about a post-production workflow. Now, this is just a potential post-production workflow. This isn't 100% settled on this, but this was just an idea that I have. So right now, each of these lines are going to represent timelines in Final Cut. Right now, we have a timeline with basically the picture log. Okay, this is the entire film. We've done a lot of modifications to some of these shots. Some of the shots have had resizing. Some of them have had digital zoom, stabilization, and various VFX done inside Final Cut itself. So what I propose is we have another timeline, just a clean new timeline. So what we're going to do is then export each and every one of these shots into this new timeline with handles and with no transitions. You know, things like dissolves, fade ins, fade outs. They should be free of any of those things so that the colorist can then tackle that stage. Okay? So then he's going to have this entire timeline similar to this, but no transitions, okay? And each of these shots now caked in with any modifications that we had down here, right? This other timeline is now going to have those shots color corrected. Okay, that's things like the whites are white, the blacks are blacks, all the skin tones look consistent, okay? And then finally, we're going to have another timeline. So 4 timelines altogether, another timeline that's going to have both the corrections and the graded applied to all this. So none of this work is wasted here. Even though he already did all the corrections, that's not wasted. We're going to have that saved as like one pass, and then we're going to have that here. So then, once we go to VFX, I propose we simply have a VFX folder or a hard drive. And then we simply have, so like let's say we have 120 VFX shots, right? And our picture lock, well, they need to then match this other timeline, 120 VFX shots, wherever they fall, okay? And they also, needs to be identical to this timeline. Now we're talking about the same shots here, right? This timeline will have the same VFX shots, okay? So we could actually draw a line where those VFX shots are. Okay. And then what I propose doing is then we export those VFX shots by simply saying 1A, 1B, 1C. This is A, this is B, and this is C. So the VFX artist has an option. Here's the shot without anything done to it. Okay, right, that was this first timeline we had. Now remember, it doesn't have any transitions. Okay, but it has any VFX already baked into it, any resizing already baked into it, okay? But it doesn't have any transitions here, okay? That would be 1A. Now this would be that same shot with the color corrections applied to it. And then finally, the C would be the graded shot. So basically what that does is that gives the VFX artist kind of options to look at each of these shots. And he may just need the corrected one, and then he may do his own grade. But see, Nolan having graded this isn't necessarily wasting any time, because that could very well be used as a reference for the VFX artist if he ultimately just kind of matches what he'd done here. So then, we have 2A, 2B, 2C, and so forth, about 120. Well, then we simply take those shots and we put them where they go to replace all that stuff, okay? Now, the VFX artist may or may not apply the grade to those things. So then we would need to basically match what we had done before. So there could be a little bit extra work on the colorist's part, but we have kind of all of these C's are going to be kind of what the shot was supposed to look like. So that's a solid reference to replace all that stuff. So then the very last thing is we're basically replacing all of this, either replacing all of this or we're just making another timeline with the transitions added, all the fade-ins, the fade-outs to kind of match this. This is always kind of a reference point, right? Because this is the completed film picture locked. So we can always kind of use this as a reference. So we could either replace this timeline or we just make a fresh timeline, and then you just match all the transitions that we have in here. Okay, so then we have the film from beginning to start with all the VFX applied. Okay, and then the very next step would be the motion graphics artist is going to go in the beginning of the film. They're going to do some animated title graphics, and I want to do this sort of ghostly credits. They kind of have this animation okay, and then the title graphic. And then at the very end, the motion graphics artist is going to do the end credits. Okay, now we have a reference of the end credits, but we didn't have a project file saved, okay, because that was done with DaVinci Resolve a long time ago. We don't have a project file saved, so they're just going to need to redo those end credits. So then, you know, we will have the entire film beginning to end, and then we can, from there, we can then do a trailer cut, and then we can have 3 exports, you know, a theatrical, a streaming, and a Blu-ray export. Now, where things get a little bit complicated, various companies may require a specific codec for their streaming, Netflix versus Shudder versus Hulu, and so forth. But that's just simply a matter of going into the final completed timelining and then setting those parameters as needed based on those company requirements. But that's basically what we're going to be doing here. And then, of course, we still have the sound design to be put into the entire film, and then the music, okay? And those things will be very last. But that's basically what I propose. So we need to just decide kind of what are some pros and cons to this system. Well, we did talk about one con to this system is, you know, when you have the export of each of these shots, you might lose a little bit of color space, okay? But we also have to remember that not everything was shot in RAW. Even a lot of that Arri Mini footage that we filmed wasn't shot in RAW. It was shot with the ProRes. Okay, and then the nice thing is it kind of cleans things up a little bit. You're not having all these digital modifications having to be reapplied to those raw shots. Okay, it'll just be nicely baked in on this timeline. So that's kind of what I propose doing. You know, like I said, it's always, there's always, like I said, pros and cons to everything. And this is just one proposal. And like I said, we don't have to be 100% set on this. But I just kind of see what you guys think about this. And let me know. All right, thanks for listening.